Fish on First has partnered with About the Fans to launch a merchandise collection. Rep the FOF logo in more Marlins-inspired apparel. Find it all at aboutthefans.com. Enter coupon code FOF10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. FOF10 for a 10% discount.
This is Griffin Conan.
This is Xavier Edwards.
This is Liam Hicks.
This is Dave Myers, and you're watching Fish on First Live.
Welcome to Fish on First Live, a rare Eli Sussman guest hosting appearance on this show. But as we do before every single Marlins series, we live stream about what's going on with the team, what's about to happen, giving our takes with the rest of the FOF staff and usually with a special guest as well. So I got Kevin to my side, got Nate Karsmer in the corner as well, special guest, super sub, Alec Chow. He's been on the show before. Great to talk to him. He's the closest thing we have to a DC correspondent. And at least for just a few more days, you're in DC, right? Before taking your talents to New York.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks.
Absolutely. We are, as always, presented by our partners at About the Fans. See across the bottom, you can save 10% when you put in FOF10 at checkout. Example from the polo that I don't wear often enough and that my staff keeps clamoring to get for themselves. I'll hook them up pretty soon. But you guys, it's already on sale at aboutthefans.com. You scroll to the FOF collection and support what we do on here. That's always greatly appreciated. As usual, we're going to start with the previous series stuff. And just like the 4 series before that, the Marlins end up losing this one, 2 out of 3 to the Pirates. Might as well just throw it over to Kevin because I know he was watching this one intently and recapping it for us on our site. Where do we want to start here, Kevin? Yeah, I guess the main points here are the return of Yuri and the rejuvenation of Sandy. And you put those two together and the results are a little bit different. Bottom line is both of them back reunited in the same rotation for the first time in 2 years, that they've both been healthy and available at the same time.
Yeah, you said it. Having Yuri and Sandy back in there was pretty cool to watch. Back-to-back days especially. Don't think that'll be the case. Actually, yeah, that will be the case once again. So Yuri pitches Sunday and then Sandy goes Monday against the Phillies. But yeah, Yuri looked all right for the most part. It was okay. I mean, Velo was there, touched 99 on 8 separate occasions. Looked pretty good, through the first 2. The third, obviously, is where it kind of all blew up for him. Really fell behind the count of the first 5 hitters. That's really what screwed him over. And yeah, I mean, just wasn't able to field the ball cleanly the first time around. Wasn't even able to field it, and that allowed the first run to score. After that, obviously a huge, bases clearing double by Brian Reynolds. And yeah, those were the 4 runs that he allowed. But overall, good stuff. The velo was there. The stuff is there. It's just a matter of controlling, especially the fastball, I think is the biggest thing. Went slider heavy, featured the sweeper, which is a new pitch for him, and used that changeup as well. That looked pretty good. So overall, good stuff from Yuri. Sandy, on the other hand, looked awesome. I know it's, that team, but still, to go 6 shutout innings, strikeout, I want to say 6 it was, walk 2. He looked good. I mean, there's another way to say it. Looked good. Marlins bullpen didn't do him any favors after that with Ronnie Henriquez allowing 2 solo shots. Not doing his trade value any favor either. And then Calvin Fauché barely escapes that jam that he got himself into there in the 9th. But overall, Sandy looked good. I think, people are now in the industry seem like they're starting to see him kind of trend in the right direction, and we could talk about that more. But for someone who you would assume was the biggest piece in the trade market, if he does that against Philly and then obviously goes up against Atlanta, I want to say that would be Sunday. You're looking at a potential, guy who could finally maybe be moved if you're the Marlins, and you'll be very happy if he looks good in those next 2 starts, especially this one coming up. They're saying maybe 3 or 4 starts, maybe more, till before the deadline, and he could possibly be moved. I know that's what Ken said on Foul Territory in an article, but overall, good stuff. Heriberto Hernandez continues to rake. I don't think I've ever been more surprised by someone raking the way this guy has. Gets his first career homer on that Wednesday game, the series finale. Fortunately, just not enough. But dude is like on a four-game hit streak. I want to say 3 of them are multi-hit games. Either it's a 5-game hit streak or 4, but he's been good, and he's in the lineup again in left field. Not hitting second, thankfully. That was pretty bad at the start that they had him hitting second, but I think he's found a good spot in this, the 7 or the 9 hole in the order. So overall, I mean, tough series. Shouldn't be losing to the Pirates, but now it's 5 straight series losses, and Washington, a team that's young and very good, I think, in my opinion, or will be very good at least in a year or two. Won't be easy, especially with the guys you have to face.
Yeah, I want to back up to Sandy and get Nate's take on where things stand with him, because I'm really on the fence in terms of my confidence level in terms of what he's doing. The results have been good the last 2 outings, especially in this most recent one. You just can't. It's hard to separate that from the fact that he's faced 2 really weak lineups in those starts against the Rockies and against the Pirates overall. So the competition, he's not going to pitch in this series. It'll be coming up against the Phillies after that. It'll be a pretty big jump in competition. But where do you stand on this? Because in some ways, actually, there's a great graphic I'll share in a moment about how his command, like statistically, was better in his last outing than it was in any other outing this year. But ultimately, it's just hard to tell, right? When he's going up against hitters that aren't much of a threat, even if he does make mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to overreact, right? I mean, I think if anything, it shows us that he still can dominate these bad lineups. I think if he really struggled against the Rockies and or the Pirates, it would have been really time to, set the panic button off. But he looked great. Command really settled, especially in those later innings. I'd like to see him do a little bit more, I think, now that he has these 2 good outings under his belt. Maybe next outing against Philly, if he does rolling, they might let him go a little bit deeper into the game, which is what I'm hoping for, especially that's when, prime Sandy's out is when he's going to the 6th, 7th, and 8th inning of games. So if he continues to build on these outings, I think it could be, the start of something good for him and build his trade value back up. His velocity's there. All his pitches look pretty good. I like that he's using the curveball more. Kind of had to reinvent himself a little bit more coming off Tommy. I think the slider's going to be incorporated eventually, but nice to see him, improvising and using that curve, but building off that 12-6 and then mixing his heater in there. So interested to see, especially, like I said, just him, just improvising after struggling at first. Trying some new things as well outside of the pitch mix. So looks good. I think, like you said, Philly's going to be a huge test. Never really does good against the Phillies, and he's struggled against, the better teams he's faced this year, like the Dodgers. So big test, I believe, coming on Monday, but definitely the step in the right direction for Sandy. And this is what the Marlins, so desperately needed from him.
Yeah. This is a graphic from The Athletic about his location plus, where 100 represents league average. It's funny that something that I really hadn't paid much attention to is how at the end of 2023, even before he was officially hurt, or he felt a difference in his elbow, you could see how that location nosedived right before he ended up going out for the season. And then this year, this being the first start where he's really significantly above average in terms of his location compared to where the catcher was setting up. I did want to go back to Carver quick now that we have him on Roberto Hernandez in this hot streak that he's been on. Nobody was asking for this, Carver. Nobody was asking for him to be called up, and it caught a lot of people by surprise, and even more surprising how much playing time he was getting, where he's batting in the lineup. But the results are there. Like, he had one of the better offensive series this past few days that any Marlins hitter has had in any series. And overall, the numbers are, he's hitting 400 he's been really good in a way that I don't think even those of us that were following him in Jacksonville really saw coming.
Yeah. I mean, the guys kind of ran with the major league call up, and it's good to see. Took him probably a little while, but he didn't have much playing time to start. But now I think he deserves to be playing regularly if he's hitting like this. So, yeah, I mean, he can man all 3 outfield spots if he needs to. He's probably more of a corner guy, but he can do all 3 outfield spots. And as long as he's making contact this consistently, you want this guy in the lineup. With Jacksonville, I think it was a little bit fortunate for him to do what he did, especially power-wise. But he's finding areas of the field with Miami at the highest level possible of baseball that he didn't really find before. So I think that he filled gaps at an advantageous time. And it's starting to really show that this guy may be a little bit more than what we thought he was. I thought he was kind of defense first with a little bit of a hit tool, not that much. I thought the raw power was decent. But if you're succeeding like this and able to find areas of the field that you never found before and can prove that it's not a fluke, he deserves to play every day. But it's looked pretty good so far. And on this Marlins team, why not give this guy a chance to play regularly? I think that he has opened a lot of eyes, mine included. I didn't think he was this kind of player. He never really was this kind of player in his upper minors career. So I think that it's a solid surprise, to say the least. I don't even think even the Marlins thought that he would perform in this capacity on a consistent basis. So if this keeps up, you keep putting him in the lineup. I just wanted to mention on Perez, this guy was clearly overthrowing in the start. He was clearly, and you can't blame him. It's his first start back. He's still a young kid, but he's clearly overthrowing. If you look at the pitch mapping chart and where his pitches landed, fastball consistently up with the fastball. He did get a lot of them to land at the top of the zone, which is good. And you know what he's trying to do there because he's trying to bury slider afterwards, which is good. But on so many of his fastballs, he just lost complete control of that pitch. And the pitchers are well out of the strike zone. So only threw one changeup too per the mapping. So I know that's kind of like his last pitch to go to, but it's a pitch he started to throw more last year and continuously has thrown more in his major league career. I just don't think that pitch is where he needs it to be yet. It's a high effort pitch. It's his last pitch, which I get, but he only threw one changeup. So I want to see that pitch come back at least a little bit for him to kind of, have that full repertoire, for him to kind of have that pitch that can at least mix in off fastball and slider really pretty well. I want to see him throw that pitch more. Even if it's a ball, it's a pitch that you can mix in to kind of change the hitter's vision. And I think that he needs it as part of his arsenal, even though it's only used or only was being used like 7% of the time last season. So, or not last season, season before, the last time he pitched. But yeah, I think that overall, it was encouraging to see him still have the velo. It's encouraging to see that slider still exists. But he definitely was amped up, which you get. I thought after the first inning, maybe he could rein it in a little bit, which he kind of started to show. And then later on, it kind of went away. So, yeah, he was overthrowing for sure is what I mean to say. If he can fix that in his next start, first one's out of the way, let's go to the next one. Hopefully he can maybe go a little bit deeper into games. Of course, that's going to be a wait and see. We know he's pitch limited, but he was overthrowing in this outing for sure. And we're going to see how that matriculates going forward.
Yeah, just one more thing on Sandy's curve I wanted to touch on. Back in 2023, his last season, before Tommy, he threw it 2% of the time. This year, it's already up to 15%. And in his start, I believe that was on Tuesday, he threw it 32% of the time, more than his fastball, more than any other pitch. So I think that really just puts in perspective what he's doing with this pitch. But like Carver said on Yuri, I agree with all that, especially with mentioning that new pitch. And he was obviously amped up. First time he's taken the mound in almost 2 years. So that's going to happen. And I think it was a good step forward for him as well. But I just wanted to throw that thing in on Sandy. That's pretty bizarre.
It'll also be an interesting decision what they do with Hernandez, because obviously we should get some sort of update today on Derek Hill. He's with the team. He's been with the team all these road trips, which is interesting to me. So we'll see what's up with him there. But yeah, I mean, if Hernandez keeps playing like that, they're gonna have some decisions to make. Who knows when Hill's coming back? Maybe in the next week or two. Guess he's gonna have to go on some rehab assignments, but they're gonna have to make some decisions, and probably some of those will have to do with the trade deadline. Who knows? But it'll certainly be interesting what they do there if Hernandez continues to hit the way he is. I don't expect him to be hitting the way he is maybe in 2 weeks, but if he somehow is, you can't send him down.
Not if he's hitting 400 with a 1065 OPS, yada yada. We encourage people to comment on the stream wherever you're watching it, and this is an impeccable transition to what I wanted to get to. The Marlins being coming out unfavorably in this survey from The Athletic. About it being, this is just grouped off the organizations, including the Nets, but most people are neutral about the Nets. And as you see here, this was about those that have good or bad reputations among major league players based on a survey of major league players. I want to go to Alec first on this because he had thoughts about it in our Discord server about the way that the results here and what it means and what it maybe doesn't mean about this is an organization that recently, of course, has gone through a lot of transition in all aspects, except for ownership. Ownership has been the constant through that, but last 2 years, a lot of other things operating differently internally. Just wanted to hear your thoughts, Alec, about seeing the Marlins coming up near the rear here in terms of negative feedback from players and nobody really nobody really going in their favor among the players that were surveyed.
Yeah, sure. And I'll also follow up with what you kind of responded, which I think is a very valid point. And my point was in reading a lot of this, I guess these numbers, the overarching caveat I'll provide is that I felt as if the Athletics coverage of the Marlins historically, and maybe some of the other, backrunner teams across MLB, has been unnecessarily negative. And I feel as if, in many ways, sometimes the team doesn't get its due. But that all being said, I felt maybe unsure of how representative these numbers perhaps are of the perception among players in the league. Like I kind of said on Discord, that if you are asking a player, for example, in a very wealthy, historically successful organization, let's call it the Yankees, the Red Sox, I guess in more recent memory, the Dodgers, they're going to have perhaps less positive opinions of an organization that is perceptibly less wealthy, less successful, maybe historically has not been around for as long. And that applies not merely to the Marlins, but to the other 4 or 5 franchises that you see on the graph there. And I think there is something to be said for how a lot of the reputation, the perception that these teams have built being reinforced by some of the coverage that publications like The Athletic put out about teams on this graph. And that's to say, I am a subscriber of The Athletic. I find a lot of their coverage at least worth reading, worth digesting as a sports fan. But I think this is part of a wider trend, perhaps, of like irresponsible reporting on the matter of the teams. And now to go back to what you said, Eli, on the matter of if the reputation is truly undeserved, then you would expect Marlins alumni or previous players to come out in defense of the organization. We haven't necessarily heard that. I think that is telling in and of itself. But I will also say that, with the advent of social media as being a very dominant way for discourse surrounding the teams and maybe surrounding the sport writ large to propagate, that you're going to have a lot of maybe any positive remarks drowned out by just preconceived notions that are reinforced about these teams, especially the Marlins. So that all being said, are there things that are probably true about the Marlins? Yes. Are there things that sound like hearsay or maybe sound like the product of a game of telephone? Like, I don't know, players eating Subway on the road. I'm not sure how that's true. It's really possible. I'm not going to discount anything. Like, you guys on this call would certainly know more about the goings on of the team on a daily basis than I would. But I don't know. There's some things that sound a little absurd and other things that sound, legitimately reasonable.
I am glad you mentioned how the national media perceives the Marlins, and they should. I mean, to be honest, they should. The Marlins have not been good at all in a very long time, aside from 2020, 2023. But I mentioned this in a group chat the other day because I'm listening to a show, and I'm just like, damn, like, I know they're not great, but like, you don't have to like harp on it, every chance you get to talk shit about the Marlins. And I do agree. I think the national media is unnecessarily negative towards the Marlins. I think there is a level of negativity that is fair, but then I think it's a little too much. And from personal experience, I've never seen Subway ever in the Marlins clubhouse. I've never seen it ever. I don't think Subway's terrible. It's not great, but yeah, you would assume a Major League Baseball team does not serve Subway to their players. Like Chick-fil-A, Chipotle, I think that's better. I've seen Chick-fil-A from personal experience. I know a lot of teams serve Chick-fil-A. So Subway, I don't know. But, I think the way that the Marlins are going to go about things is I'm hoping that survey definitely sees them up than down there with, the Rockies, White Sox, and the A's, rightfully so, at number 30. So I think that'll change within the next year or two, but we'll see.
And all I can, this is all very secondhand, but I do know that they have invested more manpower in their nutrition department specifically. It seems like that they recognize that is an area where, if not they were deficient before, then they feel like there's room for players to improve with the input of team staffers. That at least that applies on home games when they have a particular setup where players are put in a position and highly pushed towards making dietary decisions that are efficient for their bodies in ways that I don't think they're cutting corners on that particular aspect of it. So I feel like that's something that's a little outdated. There's another comment in this article on the site from an anonymous player about how the team, it was like slamming them just because they're rebuilding in a way that I didn't feel was that wasn't really useful or fair, because a lot of other teams are. But the comment essentially said that the whole organization is 17-year-old players. They're all 7 years away. And for people, you just followed their trade deadline activity last year. A lot of the players they got were surprisingly close to the majors. So it doesn't really, there's no part of that really has any merit to it either. So that's one of those other things that is just a preconceived notion, I would think, about reading headlines and seeing a team that trades away a lot of major league players and doesn't really, and kind of tunes out from that point forward in terms of what's happening on the other end. But yeah, ultimately, if they just win more games, then that solves a lot of issues. And to this point, they're only winning about as many games as they did in 2024.
I know.
My question about this particular survey, and it doesn't really specify, but like, if you're not in the clubhouse and not a member of this organization, like, how do you know? Like how do you know what's going on? How do you know what they're eating? Like, maybe one of these players saw a Marlins player with Subway in the clubhouse one time, or multiple players with Subway one time, and then decided that the Marlins are feeding their players Subway. There's just so many areas of gray matter that could that could exist in this survey. I don't think it's very well done, and it's no knock on the Athletic, but there's not enough information here for us to really trust that the players that they surveyed actually know what they're talking about. Other than, okay, maybe one of the guys is a friend of somebody on the Marlins and he said something about something. It's just so much gray area that could lead to like a he said, she said. It could lead to facts not actually being facts. I didn't like this. I thought it was just unnecessary badgering and clickbaity of the Athletic. I don't like this at all. I think that this was poor work by them. They usually do very good work, as Alec alluded to, but this is just knocking organizations for the sake of doing it without really having concrete information.
I completely agree with you, Carver, and backing off what Eli said and what David said in the chat, that players value winning above all. Here's the 10 lowest winning percentages in the past 10 years. The White Sox, the Marlins, the Rockies, the Tigers, the Pirates, the Angels, and the A's. I mean, that's seven of the top 10 all on this list. What does that tell you? I think that says that players that, like David said, they want to win above anything else. And that, sometimes they just, for no reason, the bigger publications, not even just the Athletic, ESPN, Fox. I mean, I remember back in 2023, the Marlins were getting no national recognition, even when they had the, I think, third best record in the national lead at the All-Star break. But when it's time to, when it's time to shit on them, or all other teams that have not won a lot in the past 10 years, they're the first to do it. And I think, like both of you guys said, Athletic usually does great work, but I'm not a big fan of this. And I think the teams that, their winning percentage, or just them winning in general, has a lot to do with it.
And it's weird because I know the Athletic doesn't just do this poll. They do one about there was one about managers, I want to say, like the ones you would want to play for, the ones you wouldn't want to play for. And somehow Gabe Kapler made it towards the one part that you just wouldn't want to play for a manager. Gabe Kapler has not managed since 2023, I want to say. It was the last time he was a manager. He was with the Giants. So how does he even make that list? And I know I was listening to the Foul Territory interview with the guy that does this. And he said, well, yeah, I mean, sometimes the players just don't want to answer. So they choose a random manager in their own division they don't like. It's like, all right, so that's not legit. So it's not a legit list. You're only going to, as Nate said, you're only going to vote for the teams, I guess, in this case, that are losing and not good teams. And for what it's worth, the A's kind of, that one speaks for itself. They're in a minor league ballpark. Outside of that, it's weird. And like the Tigers, why are the Tigers on there? Like, they're one of the best teams in baseball. The Mariners were always a decent team. Nationals are on the uprise. Like, I don't get it. Like the rest of them, you can make their case. Some of those, I don't know why they're on there, and it's borderline. Like one of them is like one person said bad. So I don't know. I don't think this was the greatest thing. They do this every year, so I'm looking forward to seeing how this looks like in a year from now. So, but yeah,
I guess the only thing that these teams may have in common is that a lot of them have had a lot of recent movement. So maybe they interviewed some of the players, or a grouping of players that were on
like type of player to do this with.
That were on multiple teams, or like on one. Like, I don't know. There's just not enough information about their sampling, but just looking at a trend, I guess the only thing we can really say about all of these teams is that they've lost a lot of games recently, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 of them. And the other thing is that they've had a lot of movement. So maybe, a guy gets traded and he's salty about it, or a guy gets cut and he's salty about it, gets signed for another team, and then has bad things to say about his previous team. That's a guess. I don't know. We just don't know enough about the grouping of players that they interviewed to really make a call on this. And, it's interesting. Of all things about the Marlins, they call out Subway in the clubhouse. That's the most negative thing about the Marlins? I don't think so.
Yeah, just like this is my thing. So you're just gonna go up to Aaron Judge and ask him what are the worst teams that have the worst reputations? Aaron Judge isn't gonna tell you shit because he doesn't know. His opinion, no offense to Aaron Judge, has zero value to what the White Sox or what the Rockies are doing. I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
Yeah, well, fun segment. So appreciate again the comment, bring that to our attention. I want to do an earlier than usual look at the opposing lineups, for both teams tonight in the series opener between the Nats and the Marlins. Starting off with the Nats side, an extremely young group, but also with Josh Bell in the middle. There's Josh Bell. He hasn't retired yet. He's still playing. Not playing particularly well, but he's better as of late. What I wanted to hear from you, Alec, is what level of excitement and stardom is there for James Wood at this point of his career? He is, to this point, there's 3 guys in this very lineup that all were acquired in the Juan Soto trade, but he's the one that on the field and in terms of the actual tools that he has, he's the one that clearly has the highest ceiling of this group, and he's already kind of realized it at a certain level. I guess it's hard to compare, right? Because Soto, not only was he so successful right away, but also the team was, and they won that World Series in what was his very first full season. Whereas now the Nats have been in this really prolonged stretch of having losing records, even if they're sometimes better than the Marlins. But you personally, as a baseball fan, and anything that you may have ingested from being so close to the ballpark yourself, do you think is Wood, at the very least, is he kind of emerging as the face of the team at this stage?
Yeah, I'd certainly think so. I'll make a quick flippant comment that currently James Wood has a higher WRC plus than Juan Soto does, 152 to 143. But, sample sizes may differ. I haven't actually looked that closely. That all being said, I do feel as if Wood really is going to be a centerpiece of this team for a long time. I don't follow the Nats as closely as I probably should, despite living right across the street. But I think there is a palpable excitement among people here in DC about the Nats for the first time in a while. Even as they are up on the upswing, the attention really does feel stronger this season than it has in seasons past. And yeah, if I were a Nats fan, I would be very excited with this young player who, as you can see here on Savant, barring maybe his K percentage, just right across the board, an extremely strong player who clearly keen on contact, keen on power. What more is there to say? I think he's just a really strong player. That's countervailed by another part of the Nats team that I think we'll probably discuss momentarily. But anyone else has any thoughts?
Yeah, who else among this group? I guess CJ Abrams is having even better year than he had last year. Poor Nasim Nunez. Is he still on the active roster for this series? Let me check in our old pal Nasim in his second year with the Nats organization. Not in the starting lineup tonight, but I think he got optioned down to AAA, unfortunately, even though he was on the roster when they previously met earlier on in the year. I mentioned Josh Bell, that he got to an extremely brutally slow start, but they stuck with him, and he's now adequate enough that he continues to play close to every single day. But and there's no Dylan Cruz for this one at this stage, because Dylan Cruz, I think, is on the IL as of late, and he was the one that probably among all these other guys in the organization, he was the consensus top 5 prospect in the game prior to debuting last year, and hasn't really clicked. Is anybody else, Nate, in this group kind of pique your interest for good or bad when it comes to the Nats?
Well, you guys brought up earlier, Josh Bell, man, he has been pretty abysmal this year. Had a really good stretch before the deadline last year in Miami that, got him to a contender in Arizona. But outside of that, he's been pretty bad. I know he started the year very, very bad. Done a little bit better as of late. I know he had a big series, back over in Atlanta, in Arizona, excuse me. But outside of that, you have just so many young guys on this team. Very exciting time to be a Nationals fan. CJ Abrams, like you guys have said, a little bit of a step back last year, but he's really been everything and more for this team at the top of that order, getting on base, stealing bags, and being just a defender up the middle. James Wood, of course, you guys touched on him. Even Nathaniel Lowe, they brought him in this offseason, and he's kind of been disappointing. But towards the bottom, Robert Hassler, they just called up, was that 2-3 weeks ago, also in that Juan Soto trade, who's been all right so far. Still didn't his feet under him, but up and down this lineup, very, very good team. It's going to be, like those Nationals teams in the mid-early 2010s that just hunt around and, beat up on the Marlins. Hopefully it's not that bad, but if you're a fellow NL East opponent, it's not looking good. This team's going to be very good for a long time, especially, that young core that they got guys still coming up. So it's a good time to be a DC fan. That's for sure.
That trade for Soto is just so good. It's so good. I mean, it's just so good. Like, you get CJ Abrams, who's a special player, and then James Wood, who is just doing amazing things with his bat. That's an incredible return. I mean, I think obviously a mutually beneficial trade because it's Juan Soto. But I don't think the Nationals could have asked for this to go much better. When you trade somebody like Juan Soto, you hurt your fan base. You lose trust. And even if fans know it's coming, you lose trust, and you have to rebuild, your reputation amongst your fan base. As we know as Marlins fans, they've made multiple of those trades. But for the Nationals, they have been able to rebuild that trust pretty damn quickly because of how these players have performed. And then on the flip side of it, another former Padre, Robert Hassel. So maybe he gets it going soon for them as well. So yeah, I mean, honestly, like they just could not have asked for this to go much better for them. When you trade away a perennial MVP candidate, like I said, you have to kind of make that up to your fan base, and they're doing it already. So I think a really solid return, and then I don't think the Nationals could be much happier on the business side of things either for that, in terms of that particular trade.
I talked about some of the young guys the Nationals have. That reminded me of one guy from last year's draft process. If you guys remember Seaver King, the shortstop out of Wake Forest, who was rumored to the Marlins for a long time. He got drafted by the Nationals. Already up in Double-A. He's season average. He hit 295 last year, hitting 237 in, I believe that's Harrisburg Double-A this year, with an OPS of 566. So maybe not one of their prized prospects going forward, but just a little flashback to last year. Remember, he was he put up quite the discourse in our chat.
Yeah, I didn't even mention Gorey. Throw him in as well. Like, seriously, like, just a great trade for both sides, but especially now for this Nationals team that is still, I think, in the rebuild phases, but probably in the latter end of the rebuild phase because of how quickly those prospects rise.
Alec has to get out of here relatively soon. I just wanted to get his thoughts on Mackenzie Gore, just because one of the common threads through these Nats teams over the last handful of years, the reason why they haven't won many games is largely because of their pitching. They've had lousy pitching. Gore pretty quietly leads the major leagues in strikeouts. It's not Tarek Skubal, and it's not Garrett Crochet, and it's not Chris Sale. 114 strikeouts. He pitches the series finale. It's lined up to be him versus Yuri in that final game on Sunday. Can't wait for that. I was looking back at it, and I think he's pretty easily the best pitcher they've had since Scherzer. I think you have to go all the way back to when they traded him away. Since then, it's been it's all been about the potential of their offensive players, but this is the first true ace that they've had since then, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. And, I know Mackenzie Gore had a couple, poor seasons early on in his career, but I think he's really coming into his own now. I really classify this as a breakout season for him. Just glancing very quickly at his savant, I think, something that sticks out to me is some of that slider usage has really crept up this year. I'm sure that has probably had like an effect on his performance. But again, because I haven't followed the Nationals as closely as I would like, there's not much more I could say other than he's a fantastic pitcher who, just looking at the line on a very basic level, really feels like he is becoming the leader of the pitching staff, and one that they sorely need, given that they've lost to names like Scherzer in the past few years.
So let me just go back quickly to the lineups to talk about some Marlins stuff. In particular, when it comes to Augustin Ramirez, who is going through the most extensive slump of his young big league career, which there haven't been very many at all. But I believe that Pirates series was the first series that Gus has not reached base whatsoever. He went 0 for 13 or so with 0 walks, 0 times on base. I could go to anybody on this, but I guess Kevin, how are we feeling about the fact that he was a guy that we were understandably hyping up as a prime rookie of the year contender? All of a sudden, his numbers, his production is creeping dangerously close to just league average overall. Marlins continue to give him every single opportunity to snap out of it, but yeah, how concerned should we be about the fact that he has gone into over these last couple of weeks? It's been a pretty rough stretch for him compared to what we're used to.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned. I mean, still super young, still getting used to everything. So, yeah, I mean, he got off to an awesome start, which put his numbers up as high as they can be. So, not too worried about it. He's going to drop down to league average. He's already actually under league average in WRC plus, but yeah, I wouldn't be too shocked or like too worried about him right now. He's still getting it going, still getting used to everything. If there's one thing to note, it's his ground ball rate. It's 46%, extremely high. He's just hitting the ball to the ground a lot, which has been a big issue for him. So yeah, I think that'll have to sort itself out and maybe lower him in the lineup a little bit, but realistically, not many names you could. Well, I guess Dane you could put up there a little bit. So we'll see.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm not too worried.
I have a note on Dane. Let me double check this. I believe this is now the longest streak of his career in terms of consecutive games started. People have been clamoring at times, going back to 2023, on and off, about him getting a more legitimate chance and more consistent playing time. And then it looks like that was going to happen earlier this year, and then he goes down with the injury. Oh, okay. So there was one gap in between, but even since then, this is now his 10th consecutive start. And if I did my research correctly, I think this is the only time in his career where he's made 10 straight starts for this Marlins team. The last couple of games, it's been against lefties, but for most of those games against righties. So he's getting his opportunity. He's still not batting quite as high as you would think. I'm not sure what Eric Wagman brings to the table that Dane Myers does not bring to the table, but the Marlins absolutely love Eric Wagman. He is still leading this team in plate appearances, which I think just speaks overall to the current state of things, where if he's getting more playing time than anybody else, that it puts pretty low ceiling on your offense overall. But aside from that, Kyle Stowers back in there, dropped to 7th. Part of that is facing a lefty. Part of that is a slump that he's been in as of late. Any final notes from you, Nate, about this Marlins lineup that for the most part has been slumping? There was that one explosion. You were at that game against the Rays in the middle game of that series. And then other than that, it has been a rough stretch. And it's the prime reason why they have lost back-to-back series.
Yeah, it's been same old ever since that 11-10 explosion last Saturday. Even last series in Pittsburgh against not a lot of impressive starters, they couldn't put up more than 3 runs in the games. I think it went 3-3-2, not in that order, but I know they for sure did not put up more than 3 in any game. It's just they can't get any, even when one of the guys is on, they can't get him in. Runners in scoring position hasn't been good. What really stood out in that first game or that Saturday game, and even the Sunday game after, they were actually hitting decently well with runners in scoring position, which they haven't done in that Rocky series, towards the tail end of that Giant series, and now in Pittsburgh. So really struggling in all aspects of hitting, to be honest. It's for the most part, a lot of their guys that were hitting really well, in mid-May, early May, like Kyle Stowers, like Connor Norby, have really cooled off, especially Augustine with, how much he's hit the ball straight into the ground. But you really can't give up on any of these guys. You got to just stick through it. That's part of having a young team. Got to, go through the valleys with this ball club, and it's going to happen. So it's just happened pretty much the entire month of June. Outside of Heriberto Hernandez, it's been pretty much no news from this offense, but never known it. They could just explode. I think it starts at the top with Xavier Edwards, who's been a little bit better at the plate recently, taking his watch a little bit more as well. So I think if the table setter can get things going, you never know, the momentum could happen for this offense. But like you said, Eli, I'm not, fully through with watching Eric Wagman, but the fact that he continues to get at-bats over Dane Myers when Dane has proven that he's done pretty much everything on the baseball field better than Eric Wagman, I don't understand. I'd love to know what, metrics underneath the hood suggest that Eric Wagman does better than Dane Myers. I'm very interested to see that, because it seems that the analytics department, in Miami seems to think so. So I'd love to see it personally.
It's like, who else is going to play first base? Like I don't want to see Liam Hicks play first base.
I'd rather
see Eric Wagman play first base.
Yeah, Hicks. The unfortunate wrinkle is how, even in a small sample, you could tell that Hicks is rough at first. That has been the unfortunate wrinkle where it can't be that hard. Yeah, it is incredibly hard. Unfortunately,
exactly. Yeah, just like Ron Washington said in Moneyball, it's incredibly hard apparently. But I'd rather take a missed pick at first base from Liam Hicks than consistently watch Eric Weidman take these at bats.
You know what I'd rather see? Call up Troy. Let's just.
Call up Matt Mervis again. I don't care. Anyone, please.
Yeah, Matt Mervis has been raking.
Yeah, we can talk about Matt Mervis going ballistic.
In a moment, we'll talk about that. Alec, did you want to talk about these fine gentlemen who occupy the Washington Nationals bullpen?
Yes, I did. And so going off of Nate's comment about this Marlins offense perhaps being prone to explosions, look for perhaps that explosion to come during this series off the Nats bullpen. The Nats bullpen is perhaps the worst in Major League Baseball, one of the worst for sure. And I think the worst in the National League, barring the Rockies. 5.7 ERA, 1.55 whip. Unfortunately, these guys, barring maybe Kyle Finnegan, have been prone to blowing games this season. And that's been a common complaint of friends of mine who are Nats fans. Just a couple other stats for you. 7.12 strikeouts per over 9 innings, 4.57 walks over 9 innings. And then in the 7th inning or later, they actually have a 5.85 ERA. So this Marlins offense, who is prone to also late innings rallies, I feel could do some damage off this Nats bullpen, and it could get out of control if they aren't pitching well. But that is also to say, look for Mackenzie Gore to hopefully keep the Marlins in check on Sunday. And it's going to take, I think, some early damage against Mitchell Parker, and I forget who's pitching tomorrow afternoon, excuse me. But yeah, if this bullpen doesn't cough it up, the Marlins may have some problems.
I love that you said that. And it does excite me because I think a couple of weeks ago, Connor Norby was talking to me, Kevin, along with some other media, that this team really loves to go after relievers. They see the starters for, 5-6 innings, and then when the relievers come in, they really do work. So that does definitely excite me. If this lineup, like you said, that would be perfect. Just start seeing some of these poor National relievers. We got Alex Ferrar's long lost brother, Jose A. Ferrar, in the bullpen. They maybe do some damage against, him and his pals. That'd be good for this offense. That'd be big.
Not to jump all over Eli, but just a quick comment on something that was said about Augustin. Yeah, it's obviously not as good as it was when he got called up lately. But I would disagree with two things. I think that pounding the ball into the ground thing, I would disagree with that. I don't think he is doing that. A 47% ground ball rate is not astronomically high. It's not good, but it's not astronomically high. He still has an 18% line drive percentage, which is good, and his hard hit rate per Fangraphs is still like a 32%. So he's still hitting the ball really well. I think that just lately the league has kind of started to adjust a little bit. Obviously, we all know what we say about that. It's kind of like a cop out a little bit, I think, at this point. Oh, the league adjusted, he has to adjust back. But it is true. The league's going to do different things once they have a larger sample on you. They have a decent sample on this guy now. They know which pitches he hits well. They know what counts he's good in and what counts he is not. They know how to attack the player a little bit better based on count. That's what the league is doing. They are getting a better idea of how this player operates. And at the minor league level, you have tools, but not necessarily all of the tools that they have at the major league level. So he is struggling, yes, because the league has started to adjust to him. And as the old saying goes, it is now up to him to change a little bit maybe of what he was doing in the minors, to maybe attack differently in different counts, to view pitches a little bit differently, to know what major league stuff really looks like, which he now has a pretty good idea of that, I think, and learn from it and learn from his coaches. So it's an adjustment period, but it's nothing that's insurmountably bad for this player. He still is hitting the ball. It's just that it's not, in some cases, it's not landing. Yes, the ground ball rate may be up a little bit, but he's still managing strikeouts, I think, pretty well. The hard hit rate is there and has still been there. So I don't think there's anything really to truly worry about yet for this player. I think he's still fine.
Okay. Do you still have to run, Alec? Because we can queue you up for the little prediction time clip, and we'll edit it together with the rest of ours in a moment.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Okay. Let me just get that and take that down and center up. You know exactly how to do this because you are pretty religious about submitting your picks before every series as one of our super subs. How many games are the Marlins going to win, and who is your series MVP? Oh, that's the wrong background. That's the Mets series. Let's see if I have the Nationals one. Boom. Go ahead.
All right, perfect. Well, let's say Marlins take 2 on this one. I'm going to be bullish, and I'll say Heriberto Hernandez has a very strong series.
I love it.
Okay. Thanks again, Alec, for your support and for stopping by. And so we'll wrap this up without you. But enjoy your
My
weekend.
pleasure. Take care, guys.
We can touch a little bit more.
I feel so dumb sitting in a room with that guy, knowing that he literally qualified for Jeopardy and did pretty damn well. So I love Alec. He's great. The only the only thing is like he's a Marlins fan, like one of the smartest people that we know, and he loves this team. So I guess they draw all kinds, right? So a great dude. I love Alec. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Another overview of the probables in this series. It's Edward versus Mitchell Parker tonight. It's still TBD for the middle game just because the Marlins are going to, we think, go some combination of a bullpen thing. Let's see. Junk pitched on Monday, right? Most recently in relief of Yuri. So he'd be on regular rest, possibly. They have Beozo in the bullpen, who they used as the bulk guy for the final game of that Rays series. He'd be even more rested, potentially. And that's against Trevor Williams, who is, remember, Trevor Williams was super good last year, and then he got hurt, and then he went back to being Trevor Williams, so who is not good anymore. That will be a game that if the Marlins can't do much damage against him, then they have a big issue. And then, as mentioned before, that Sunday finale, it is the second outing of Yuri Perez in his return from Tommy John versus the Major League strikeout leader in Mackenzie Gore. I guess we could just talk briefly about that vacant spot in the rotation, which is here because of still that Ryan Weathers injury that happened a week ago. Current rotation, it's Yuri, it's Sandy, it's Eddie, it's and who am I missing? Cal Quantrill. Can't forget about Cal. So then what would you do here, Nate, for the foreseeable future? Because they do have a few different options. It could be continuing to stretch out Junk, who was starting and doing as well as anybody in Jacksonville before he got called up. There's Beozo, who across most of his career to this point in the majors, he gets guys out, even if they don't give him a long leash to do so. They have Adam Mazur is already on the 40-man roster. Is he finally going to get an opportunity? While they have this little window before Max Meyer comes back, and it looks like Weathers, that's going to be a long-term thing. But at least for the next couple starts, what would you like to see them do with that spot in the rotation?
Yeah, well, I do think Mays would be the most enticing, obviously the highest, prospect pedigree, and I think he does have a future in this rotation. I think you got to keep rolling with what Jansen Junk's been doing, man. He's led really well, like you said, in Jacksonville. He started a couple games down there earlier in the season, and he's been really good at this big league level. Short a little bit in his last outing in Pittsburgh, but I think his stuff has just been looking so much better since coming into the Marlins organization. They really helped develop his pitches, especially that his off-speed electric sweeper. So I think that'd be my pick. I really wanted to see him go last Sunday. Even I was fine with Beozo starting last Sunday, but it would not surprise me if they go another reliever similar to Veneziano a week ago. You could see Veneziano again. You could see a righty. You could see, the man Tate Gibson. But that's what I'm expecting. They'll probably just go, a couple. They'll piece together the first 3 or 4. Maybe Ronnie Henriquez will go for the first, and they want to just keep using him earlier and earlier in games, so maybe they'll just start him. But I think moving forward, I'm gonna roll with Jansen Junk. No problem with Mazur, but I think it just made sense to see what you got with a guy like Junk who's still pretty young.
I think for tomorrow, at least, it would make sense to go with Junk or Beozo. But at this point, those guys aren't a part of your future. May as well roll out Mazur, see what you got. If I would do it, I don't think it would have lined up well for him to go tomorrow. Definitely would line him up well for the Phillies series. It's 4 games. May as well give him 1, see what you got, and at that point, keep going. But tomorrow, there's not much you could do. You're going to have to go with one of those 2 guys, in Beozo or Junk. I would assume it's going to be Beozo. And for the Philly series, you got to go with Mazur. I just don't see a world where going with openers and at this point, long relievers is sustainable through the course of the remainder of the season. Obviously, at some point, you're hoping to see Robbie Snelling. Mazur has to get up there at some point. He had a pretty nice start in his last start with Jacksonville. I think he struck out 7 or 8. Looked pretty good for the most part. So Mazur at some point has to be your guy.
We shall see. Yeah. But the fact that they already have this lined up makes it very likely that it's going to be somebody on the existing pitching staff that they cobble together for that middle game right here. And this is the first time that the Marlins are in DC this year. Last year, of course, they got really destroyed in their season series against the Nats, but things corrected themselves, straightened themselves out earlier this year. Their first matchup in Miami, the Marlins took 2 out of 3. And as we've touched on, they have not won a series in over like 2.5 weeks at this point. So the drought has been going on a while, even against teams that are worse than the Nats even are, even against the Rockies and even against the Pirates. But the Nats themselves, as we've covered, they do have several significant flaws right here. That makes you think that this is a pretty even matchup. That will bring us to prediction time.
This is prediction time.
I think we're going to win a lot of games, a lot more games than you think we're going to win this year.
An overview of our prediction time leaderboard through the first 22 series of the regular season. Rings is the name that Alec uses in our Discord. So he is number 2 on the overall leaderboard right there. Hope you guys were listening to what he had to say earlier in his prognostication, because he's been pretty good so far. And there's myself, and I didn't realize me and Nate are tied. Yeah, both of us for barely clearing that arbitrary cutoff that I make for myself. But overall, we've had over 50 people logged in this leaderboard from this season between super subs and our staff and our stream guests as well. So still, 18 minutes or so, if you are a super sub or want to become one, to go over to our site, fishonfirst.com/subscriptions, if you want to support what we do and have your own predictions tracked on our leaderboard throughout the entire season. We just pick how many games the Marlins are going to win, who's going to be the series MVP in terms of win probability added. Could be a hitter, a pitcher, could be for either team so far. So let me just get the background up there again. And we're probably going to have Nate for a change bat lead off with our prediction time. So let me just get the music bopping and then pull him up.
You sound like you're underwater.
Oh, well, you want to come back to me then?
No, restart it. Now you're good.
All right, let's do it again. I think the Marlins will lose their 6th straight series in DC this weekend, and naturally to the Marlins a year or two, just like Eli said. They'll lose 2 out of 3. Series MVP has had a slow start, like I mentioned, but I think Nathaniel Lowe, former Ray, former Ranger, is going to figure it out against these rights in the Marlins rotation. He's your MVP.
Well, let's hear from Alex Carver. Your prediction, sir.
Yeah, I could go either way on this one. I will base it on the fact that I'm just still not confident in Marlins pitching. I shouldn't really be that confident overall in Nationals pitching, but I'm just still not there with Marlins starting pitching. You don't know what you're going to get from Edward. Who knows who they're going to start in the second game? And Yuri, who knows how long he goes and how much of the bullpen has to do against what I think is a pretty damn good young offense. So I will give it Nationals 2 out of 3, and I'm going with the man, James Wood, MVP.
Kevin Burrell, let's hear from you.
I'm going to go with the Marlins sweep, and my series MVP is going to be, I'm going to try it again. I'm going to go with Dane Myers with my series MVP. Feeling good about this series against the Nats.
That's pretty bold. We'll see if it comes through. The Marlins have not swept a series all year, actually. One of the few teams that still haven't. I don't think they're going to sweep this one. I don't think they're going to win it either. I'll go with the Nats taking 2 out of 3. And despite the criticism that we've shared about this current state of the Nats bullpen this year, it has been slightly less awful this year. The one steady force at the very back end is their closer, Kyle Finnegan. It's unusual to pick a reliever to be series MVP, but I actually had some success with that last season, if I remember correctly. I'll go with it in this case again. That the Nats win 2 out of 3. 2 of those games get saved by Kyle Finnegan, and that is enough to earn him MVP honors.
Kyle Finnegan, that's a stud.
First reliever pick of the year.
I guess so. That nobody else has thought of doing so. Yeah, but it is possible. It's unlikely, but it is possible. And I even checked that he was pretty well rested coming into the series, so there's no excuse for him not to pitch multiple times if the situation calls for it. Thanks everybody for tuning in to FOF Live and watching the entire show right here as we're 15 minutes away from first pitch. We'll be back for the next series as well. Make sure to check out all our recent stuff on the site as well as on all of our platforms, including Fish Unfiltered with Kevin and me and Isaac as well. That was just as long as the stream was, talking about some of the same topics, but even more focused on trade deadline possibilities. So if you're into that, you can find that on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to Alex Carver and Kevin and Nate and our special guest, Alec Chow. I'm Eli Sussman. Enjoy your weekends. Enjoy your series. Or if you don't enjoy watching the Marlins lose, then maybe you enjoy something else this weekend instead in place of that. But thanks again for supporting what we do here at Fish on First. So we'll be back again to talk to you soon. As always, go.
Fish on First has partnered with About the Fans to launch a merchandise collection. Rep the FOF logo in more Marlins-inspired apparel. Find it all at aboutthefans.com. Enter coupon code FOF10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. FOF10 for a 10% discount.